It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, no big fight, no betrayal. Just a quiet Tuesday morning when you realised you didn't care anymore whether she texted back. And that realisation didn't feel like defeat. It felt like freedom. 6 months ago, that same silence would have sent you spiralling. You would have crafted the perfect follow-up message. You would have analysed what you said wrong. You would have checked your phone every 3 minutes. But today you just lived. And in that simple shift, something fundamental changed about who you are and how the world responds to you. If you've reached this point or you're close to it, what I'm about to explain will make everything make sense. Stay with me. The psychology of men who stop chasing women isn't about bitterness, misogyny, or giving up on relationships. It's about a specific developmental threshold that transforms how a man operates in the world. And once you cross it, you can't go back. Not because you're damaged, but because you've evolved past the version of yourself that needed external validation to feel whole. Here's what most people misunderstand. Stopping the chase isn't a decision. It's a realization. You don't wake up one day and decide to stop pursuing women. You wake up one day and realize you already have. The desperation that used to drive you? Gone. The anxiety about being alone? Dissolved. The need to prove yourself worthy of attention? Evaporated. What's left is something most men never experience. Genuine self-sufficiency. This video breaks down the psychological transformation that happens when a man completely stops chasing. Not as a tactic, not as reverse psychology, but as a fundamental reorganization of his identity and values. There are 5 core psychological shifts that occur, each building on the last, each irreversible once understood, and by the end you'll understand why men who stop chasing don't become less attractive to women, they become incomprehensibly more attractive. Let's break it down. For most of your life, your emotional state has been controlled by forces outside yourself, specifically by female attention and approval. When she texted back quickly, you felt good. When she didn't, you felt anxious. When she showed interest, you felt confident. When she pulled back, you questioned everything about yourself. Your mood, your self-esteem, your sense of worth, all of it fluctuated based on variables you couldn't control. Psychologists call this an external locus of control. Your internal state is determined by external circumstances, and in the context of dating, it's devastating because you've essentially given random women the remote control to your emotional life. They didn't ask for that power, you handed it to them. Here's what this looked like in practice. You'd meet a woman. The first date goes well. You feel amazing. You text her the next day. She responds 8 hours later with something brief. Your mood crashes. You analyze the message. You wonder what you did wrong. You craft the perfect response. You wait. She responds the next day. Your mood lifts. This cycle repeats endlessly. Your emotional stability is entirely dependent on her communication patterns. But when you stop chasing, something neurological happens. The external locus of control dies, and in its place, an internal locus of control develops. This isn't about not caring what people think. It's about your baseline emotional state no longer being held hostage by anyone's approval or attention. You develop what psychologists call emotional sovereignty. Your mood is determined by your own actions, your own progress, your own alignment with your values. Not by whether some woman you met 2 weeks ago thinks you're attractive. This shift is seismic because once you experience emotional sovereignty, you can't unknow it. Imagine waking up and your first thought isn't, "Did she text me?" It's, "What am I building today?" Imagine going through your entire day without checking your phone compulsively because there's no anxiety attached to communication. Imagine going to bed feeling fulfilled regardless of whether you had any romantic interaction. That's internal locus of control. That's emotional sovereignty. Women feel this shift immediately. A man whose emotions aren't controlled by female attention radiates a completely different energy than a man who's seeking validation. The first feels like granite, stable, unmovable, self-contained. The second feels like water, shifting, seeking, trying to fill whatever container will have him. Women are drawn to granite. Water makes them uncomfortable because they can sense your instability. But killing the external locus of control creates space for something else, something that explains why you suddenly have more free time, more mental clarity, more energy than you've had in years. Do you have any idea how much mental energy you've been wasting? Let me paint a picture of your old operating system. You wake up. Within 5 minutes, you've checked 3 apps to see if she engaged with anything you posted. You're in the shower planning what to text her. You're at work, but 30% of your attention is on your phone, waiting for her response. You're at the gym, but you're actually thinking about whether she's at the gym with someone else. You have a conversation with your friend, but you're not fully present because you're wondering if you should text her tonight or wait until tomorrow. You're watching a movie, but you're checking your phone every 10 minutes. You go to bed, and the last thing you do is check if she viewed your story. This is cognitive bandwidth hemorrhaging. Your mental resources are constantly divided between what you're doing and what she might be thinking, feeling, or doing. Psychologists estimate that this kind of rumination can consume 40-60% of your available cognitive bandwidth. That's not a metaphor. That's actual mental processing power that could be directed toward work, creativity, learning, building, problem solving. Instead, it's being burned on variables you cannot control and questions that have no answers. When you stop chasing, that cognitive bandwidth returns. All of it. Suddenly, you're fully present in conversations, you're fully engaged in your work, you're fully absorbed in your hobbies. Your mind isn't fragmented across a dozen what-ifs about her. It's consolidated, focused, powerful. This creates a compound effect. With full cognitive bandwidth, you perform better at work. Better performance leads to recognition, promotions, financial growth. You're more creative because your mind has space to wander productively instead of anxiously. You're more social because you're actually present with people instead of mentally elsewhere. You learn faster because you're not distracted. Within months, men who reclaim their cognitive bandwidth often report dramatic life improvements that have nothing to do with dating. Better career outcomes, deeper friendships, new skills acquired, physical transformations, not because they became superhuman, but because they stopped leaking mental energy into a void. And here's the paradox. The more you improve in these areas, the more attractive you become. But you're not improving to be attractive. You're improving because you finally have the mental resources to do so. The attraction is a byproduct, not the goal. And women can sense that difference. But reclaiming cognitive bandwidth reveals something else. Something most men have been avoiding their entire adult lives. This is the phase most men never make it through. Because when you stop chasing women, when you reclaim your cognitive bandwidth, when you're no longer using pursuit as distraction, you're forced to confront something terrifying. Emptiness. The silence of your own life. For years, maybe decades, you've been running. Not towards women, but away from yourself. Pursuit was the drug that numbed you from having to ask uncomfortable questions. Who am I without this chase? What do I actually want? What am I building? What do I believe? What makes me feel alive when no one is watching? Most men can't sit with these questions. The moment the emptiness appears, they panic and immediately find a new woman to chase. Not because they're actually interested in her, but because the pursuit fills the void. It gives structure to their days. It gives meaning to their nights. It gives them something to think about besides themselves. But when you truly stop chasing, you can't run anymore. You're forced to sit in the emptiness, and initially it's brutal. You feel bored, purposeless, lonely not for another person, but for the distraction they provided. You realize how much of your identity was wrapped up in being the pursuer and how little exists beneath that role. This is the valley, the low point, the place where most men turn back and resume chasing because it's easier than facing the abyss. But if you stay in the emptiness, if you resist the urge to fill it with another pursuit, something remarkable happens. The emptiness becomes a canvas. You start asking better questions. Not, how do I get her to like me? But what do I actually want to create in my life? Not, why won't she text back? But what kind of man do I want to become? Not, how do I fix this situation? But what situations do I want to stop accepting? The emptiness forces you to build an internal world. You develop real hobbies, not attractive hobbies. You pursue real goals, not impressive goals. You create real values, not borrowed values. You become a person with substance because you finally stopped using other people as a substitute for having a self. And this is where the transformation becomes visible. Because a man with an internal world is fundamentally different from a man with an external focus. The first has depth. The second has performance. The first is interesting. The second is trying to be interesting. The first attracts naturally. The second tries to attract strategically. But confronting emptiness and building an internal world creates another shift. One that changes how you perceive women entirely. When you were chasing, women existed in a specific category in your mind. They were goals, challenges, validators, sources of happiness, completion objects, missing pieces. Every woman you met was evaluated through the lens of, can she fill what I lack? This is objectification, but not in the way most people think. You weren't objectifying women sexually, you were objectifying them functionally. Each woman was a potential solution to your internal deficits. Lonely? Find a woman. Bored? Find a woman. Insecure? Find a woman who validates you. Directionless? Find a woman to build around. Women weren't people. They were functions. This isn't conscious. Most men who do this would be horrified by the description. But functionally, that's what's happening. You're relating to women as utilities, not as humans. And women can feel this, even if they can't articulate it. They sense that you're not interested in them as people. You're interested in what they can do for you emotionally. When you stop chasing, when you confront emptiness, when you build an internal world, the category changes. Women stop being functions and become people. Actual, complex, flawed, interesting people. Not better or worse than you. Not above or below you. Just people. This shift is profound because it changes every interaction. You're no longer evaluating women for their utility. You're experiencing them for who they are. You're not thinking, can she complete me? You're thinking, is spending time with her enjoyable? You're not asking, does she validate me? You're asking, do we have genuine compatibility? This reconceptualization does something unexpected. It makes you significantly more attractive. Because for the first time in your life, you're relating to women as equals rather than as prizes or validators. And women, especially high-value women, immediately sense the difference. A man who sees women as people doesn't put them on pedestals. He doesn't worship them, but he also doesn't resent them. He doesn't play games. He doesn't manipulate. He just interacts authentically because there's no hidden agenda. He's not trying to extract validation or fill a void. He's just seeing if there's genuine mutual interest. This is the energy that creates real connection. Not the manufactured kind that comes from strategic pursuit, but the organic kind that emerges when two complete people meet and discover they enjoy each other. But this reconceptualization leads to the final and most important shift. For your entire dating life, you've operated under a specific paradigm. Women select, men compete. Women are the gatekeepers, men are the applicants. Women have abundance, men have scarcity. This paradigm shapes everything, your approach, your behavior, your self-perception. You see yourself as someone who must prove worthy of selection. This creates supplicant energy. Even when you're confident, even when you're successful, there's an underlying assumption that she's evaluating you and you need to pass her tests. You need to be interesting enough, successful enough, attractive enough to earn her approval. The power dynamic is clear. She chooses, you hope to be chosen. But when you stop chasing, when you've developed emotional sovereignty, reclaimed cognitive bandwidth, confronted emptiness, built an internal world, and reconceptualized women as people, the paradigm inverts. You realize something that changes everything. You're not hoping to be selected. You're doing the selecting. This isn't arrogance. It's accurate self-assessment. You've built yourself into someone valuable. You've created a life you enjoy. You've developed internal resources. You've become someone who adds value to any interaction. You're no longer deficient and seeking completion. You're complete and considering whether someone enhances what you've built. This inversion completely changes the energy. You're no longer in interviews. You're having conversations. You're not performing. You're evaluating. You're not proving yourself. You're seeing if she's compatible with the life you've created. The frame shifts from, am I good enough for her, to is she good enough for the life I'm building? Women feel this shift viscerally, because most men they interact with are still operating in the old paradigm, still seeking approval, still trying to impress, still hoping to be chosen, but you're different. You're the one choosing. And that energy, that genuine selective energy that comes from knowing your value, is magnetic. High-value women, women who have been approached by hundreds of men, immediately recognize when they encounter a man who's genuinely selective. It's rare. And rarity creates attraction. She's used to men chasing. She's not used to men evaluating whether she meets their standards. That reversal creates intrigue, challenge, and respect. But here's the beautiful part. You're not performing selectiveness. You're genuinely selective because you've built something you refuse to compromise. You've created peace, purpose, and progress, and you're only interested in someone who adds to that, not someone who disrupts it. When all 5 shifts integrate, when they become your default operating system, you become something most men never achieve. Genuinely indifferent to outcome, not fake indifference, not strategic indifference, genuine, bone-deep indifference to whether any particular woman is interested in you. This doesn't mean you don't want connection. It means you don't need it. This doesn't mean you're closed off to relationships. It means you're only open to the right ones. This doesn't mean you don't find women attractive. It means their attraction to you doesn't determine your self-worth. Here's what this looks like in practice. You meet an interesting woman. You have a great conversation. You exchange numbers. You might text her. You might not. Either way, your week continues exactly as planned. If she responds enthusiastically, you'll explore whether there's genuine compatibility. If she doesn't, you literally don't think about it again. Your life has momentum that exists independent of any romantic prospect. You go on a date, it goes well, you enjoy yourself, you might see her again, you might not. The outcome doesn't affect your baseline happiness because your baseline happiness comes from your life, not from her validation of it. You're not calculating next moves or strategizing texts. You're just seeing what unfolds naturally. This creates a paradox that men who are still chasing cannot comprehend. The less you care about securing a woman's interest, the more interested she becomes. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you genuinely are hard to get. Your life is full. Your standards are high. Your attention is valuable because you don't give it freely to anyone who might reciprocate. Women, especially women who are used to being pursued, find this disorienting and attractive. They're used to men who bend, accommodate, chase, prove. They're not used to men who are genuinely content with or without them. That contentment is the most attractive quality a man can have because it signals complete self-sufficiency. But here's what most men miss. This isn't a tactic to attract women. This is who you've become. The attraction is a side effect, not the goal. You stopped chasing because you realized chasing was incompatible with the life you want to build. And the life you've built is so fulfilling that adding someone to it is optional, not essential. Here's something you need to understand. Once you cross this threshold, you can't go back. Not because you're damaged or broken, but because you've seen behind the curtain. You know how hollow the chase was. You know how much of your life you wasted seeking validation. You know how free you feel without that burden. Some men reach this point and panic. Because what happens when you meet someone you actually like? Can you still pursue? Can you still show interest without falling back into old patterns? The answer is yes, but it looks completely different. When you meet someone who genuinely interests you, you don't chase, you invite, you don't pursue, you offer, you don't prove yourself, you reveal yourself, you share your life and see if she wants to join it. If she does, beautiful. If she doesn't, your life continues unaffected. This might sound cold to people still operating in the old paradigm, but it's actually the healthiest form of connection. Because both people are choosing from a place of wholeness, not need. Both people are adding to each other's lives, not completing them. Both people can leave at any time, which paradoxically makes them more likely to stay. But some men reach this point and realize they don't actually want a relationship at all. The want for relationship was actually a want for validation disguised as romance. Once they have internal validation, the desire for external relationship fades entirely. That's okay too. There's no rule that says you have to want partnership. The psychology of men who stop chasing women completely is the psychology of men who stopped outsourcing their self-worth. They stopped making women the measuring stick of their value. They stopped fragmenting their attention across variables they can't control. They stopped running from themselves. They stopped seeing women as functions. They stopped hoping to be chosen and started choosing. This transformation isn't about becoming cold, closed off, or emotionally unavailable. It's about becoming whole. And wholeness is the most attractive quality any human can possess because it's so rare. Most people are walking around as fragments, desperately seeking other fragments to feel complete. When you show up as a whole person, you stand out. If you're going through this transformation right now, understand that the discomfort is temporary. The emptiness you're feeling is just space opening up for you to build something real. The loneliness you're experiencing is just the absence of distraction. Sit with it. Build through it. Become someone you respect. And when the right woman appears, someone who adds to your life rather than complicates it, someone who meets you as an equal rather than seeking completion, someone who chooses you as clearly as you choose her, you'll understand why you had to stop chasing everyone else. Because you were never supposed to chase. You were supposed to build yourself into someone worth choosing. Subscribe if this resonated. Like if you've stopped chasing. Comment where you are in this transformation. And remember, the goal isn't to never want connection. The goal is to never need it to feel whole. Everything else flows from there